Councillor Pearce, I'll thank you for the introduction because you've dealt with the questions I was going to raise and certainly the information about the interim Chief Executive Officer, because I wasn't prepared to welcome anybody unless I knew a bit more about them. So thank you for that. I would also like perhaps to know a bit more about the appointment process. Where was it advertised and who made the appointment, and if it was Plymouth City Council, whether there was any member involvement. And I welcome Councillor Hopwood's amendment, which talks of requesting a meeting with officers and ward members. But as with you've likened it, the AOMB, will there be a place for members to take some sort of part in the management of this body? Or is it just going to be a bit of a chin wag, or will Plymouth City Council members be involved in management, and certainly in our case will Cornwall and South Hams be involved?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Bodry. I think that is in itself the aim of this motion, to understand a bit more, but if Councillor Pearce is further aware of this, I'd invite her to clarify it.
Councillor Baldry, my understanding of it is that none of this has been set up yet, so it's all up there for grabs. So I think an early meeting with the CEO would be a very good idea, and I will also go through the political channels to the leader of Plymouth City Council on the subject.
Are there any further comments? Debate? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you.
Sorry.
If they listen to our advances, as it were, is there likely to be a financial implication for us if we are asking to take part in the debates and decisions that we may be asked to contribute to the cost of the enterprise?
Councillor Pearce?
Well, we may have to put our money where our mouth is. Maybe not, Councillor Hannah.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful to Councillor Brown for bringing this motion to Council. As a neighbouring ward member, I welcome the amendment from Councillor Hopwood, and I will certainly be supporting. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else? No, so we can move to the vote. Mr. White, all by hand? Yes?
Yes, please.
Right. Show of hands for all those in favour.
That is unanimous for the updated motion. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. We'll move on to motion B by Councillors Baston and Hawkins. Councillor Baston, would you simply move the motion?
So moved, Chairman.
Councillor Hawkins, second the motion.
Second.
Do you, Councillor Baston to speak, but do you want to reserve the right, Councillor Hawkins, to later?
Please.
Right, so Councillor Baston, would you like to introduce the motion?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be very brief because the agenda papers have been pretty good. I'll be brief because the agenda papers have been quite informative. So if you've read the agenda papers, you'll be fairly well informed. So as I said, I'll keep this brief. The Torbay and South Devon NHS have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a real difference in how they deliver services with 2 or 4 people through the government's new hospitals programme. Their aim is to take advantage of new technologies and the latest improvements in health and social care, planning not only for the needs of people today, but for the future. And that is why they are calling the programme Building a Brighter Future. Sounds similar to something else I heard. The new EPR, or electronic patient record, will replace more than 20 core systems, streamlining processes, reducing duplication and bureaucracy, and positively benefiting patient care staff experience. It is a major change that will affect all our clinical services, and it is critical to supporting the further integration of acute, community and social care services, helping to deliver new and better models of care for patients and staff. The Trust are seeking our support as a key stakeholder, and so as a council it would be great if we could offer them our support in this process. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Paston, you're going to reserve your right to speak. Councillor Hawkins, did you say?
I'm happy to speak now if that's
That's fine.
Chairman.
It's okay.
It's all flashing at me. I'm not saying it's blue. That's fine, thank you. Happy to second this, obviously as the lead member on the executive for the wellbeing. I have been a governor of the Torbay and South Devon Health Trust for a number of years with our fellow district councillor, Councillor Rowe. This seems to me to be a long overdue process. At governor meetings, and we had a report on this last week, which Councillor Rowe was at, it seems amazing to me that an awful lot of our health records are still paper copy. And that obviously causes a huge backlog and hard work for staff in the NHS to check all our records. It just seems amazing in 2022 that this is still the case. So it's long overdue. It's going to make a huge difference to all our health services in the South Hams. They are looking at possibly joining up with other trusts in the area, including Plymouth, Exeter, and perhaps even with Cornwall, which certainly would seem to make sense to me. The whole project is going to cost between 50 and 350 million pounds, which is a huge amount of money, and that's just for the Torbay Trust. So really good news, and long overdue.
Sure. Councillor. Councillor Brazil.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to sound a note of caution on this. The last time I remember a big IT system that was going to solve all our problems in the NHS was brought in. About £10 billion later, it was in a complete mess and had to go back to where they started to. So it's obviously the right way forward, but the devil is going to be in the detail. I don't have that detail. And so I would like to reserve judgment as to whether I support it or not. Because if they use the usual suspects of government so-called experts, then no doubt this will cost another billions of pounds and nothing will come of it. And while I'm on the Torbay and South Devon NHS Foundation Trust, I do find it incredible that still we have no minor injuries unit at Totnes. The failure of them to provide new beds at Dartmouth Hospital, or the new health centre at Dartmouth. I will be resisting any amalgamation with this trust with the Plymouth one. The Plymouth one deals with our community hospital in Kingsbridge, and it does very well. As such, I find this trust needs to shape up or ship out.
Councillor Brazil, I've got quite a long list here. Councillor Baldry.
Question, what about Derriford? Councillor Hawkins said this is going to make a big difference to the whole of the South Hams. But there is more to the South Hams than those in the Torbay Trust. A lot.
That's why, Mr. Chairman, I did actually say that the trust is working with Derriford.
You did, but I'm just
going through the same process.
Can I speak? I think this council concentrates far too much on the Torbay NHS end, and we do not seem to get reports or presentations or any information or people appearing from the Plymouth area, and it's the Plymouth area that looks after all of the Western South Hams.
Thank you. I've got quite a lot of names here. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, I'm not quite sure why we're taking a motion on this, because I thought normally our motions were just about things that were related to our policies or things that we were directly going to do, as opposed to kind of just nod in the direction of somebody else. I mean, I have no problem in principle with it, but I just wondered why it's actually come before us. Is it kind of our business to have a motion on something like this?
I'll defer to whoever can answer that question. Yeah.
Chairman, they are seeking our support as a key stakeholder in health and well-being in this end of the South Hams.
It's just a question. I'm slightly reassured that I think Councillor Basson said that they're going to be spending about 350 million. Is that right on the project? Yeah, because the wording is very odd in the slides. It says we have, and this is from Torbay, we have been allocated £3.7 billion government funding. I imagine that is for the whole country and not for Torbay, but it's not very well set out. So,
No, that is Torbay.
3.7 billion.
Oh no, that's for the full country.
Well, that's what I presumed, but that's not what it actually says. So I'm slightly reassured to know it's only going to cost 300 million, but even so, that's an awful lot of money. If you look at the wording on the slide and in your motion, it actually does say 303. We have been allocated 3.7 billion.
Councillor McKay, you put your hand up earlier. Yes, you did.
I'd like to echo what Councillor Brazil just said. I think there is we should approach this with caution. I mean, the spine project, as was, it did consume about 10 billion pounds and produced absolutely nothing. It was a shambles. One of the problems with all of these systems is that they need to talk to each other. And having an EPR system that just works in Torbay and doesn't talk to a hospital in London. If I go to London and I have a heart attack or whatever, this would be worse than useless for me. It doesn't actually address the real issue, and there needs to be a nationwide system, and the spine project needs to be recreated. But at least there should be a dialogue across the whole of the southwest to make sure that any other systems that get developed can all talk to each other. And then maybe it could be sold to other counties throughout the country so that everybody's got the same system. I don't know. But just to support this willy-nilly, I think we need a lot more information in order to support it. And 350 million is probably a drop in the ocean, really, when developing systems like this. And it'll probably actually come in as a lot higher than that.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, I would support the motion, but I'd like to have much more robust questioning about how they're going to implement it, because I work at Torbay and I work for the NHS, and I know the systems that we use are just not working at the moment, and I'd want to ask a lot more questions about procurement, who was going to set it up, and the cost of it, because we've had 3 new systems in the last few years, and none of them work properly, and the communication's appalling to the detriment of patients, all of us actually. So I'm not convinced. It sounds really great, and I'm really in favour of it. But my experience, it doesn't really work very well. So I'd welcome a more robust questioning of how they're going to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, having been sort of involved with the NHS either by association or osmosis for most of my life, I'm as sceptical about this as everybody else is. But I have to say that the £10 billion programme was organised by central government and actually organised by the civil service, and therein I think lies the problem. I'm not particularly convinced that this is going to be any better, but I think the point of this motion being before this council is that if it works, it will help the well-being of our residents, and that's why it's here, and that's why it's associated with the council. So I hope that clears up that problem. The 3.7 billion government funding, according to how this is written, and I only try and read what's in front of me, and I wish everybody else would, has been allocated to the NHS Torbay and South Devon Foundation Trust. And part of this money is going towards this single integrated electronic patient record. Now, I agree that this kind of thing should have happened ages ago, and that they are still writing things down and sending people letters, which is the most antiquated system you can help for. But the problem with the NHS is that not only does nobody really account for the money that's spent there, not properly, it's also riddled with bastions of self-interest and all sorts of things that should also have been sorted out years ago. And so until that goes, little is likely to change. And we're all going to be left with waiting lists that by anybody else's language would be called rationing. But for some reason, because it's the NHS, we call it waiting lists. But anyway, let's keep our fingers crossed. Let's hope that this works, that clears up the problems that Susie was talking about, and that we actually have integrated patient records so that at least in the South Hams and possibly Cornwall as well, it'll work. But just don't fall under a bus in London, because it won't work there, because they're not attempting to do it all the way across the country. So I have a certain amount of sympathy in what Councillor McKay is saying too. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Rowe, now you're our representative on the South.
Yes, I am. And this actually, the first I knew about this motion coming before this council was when I got the agenda. Nobody has said to me this is what's going to happen. And I am your representative on the South Devon Healthcare and Torbay South Devon Healthcare Trust. And I was at the meeting, or it was by Zoom, last week on Thursday afternoon when Councillor Hawkins was also there. And in my notes it says it's going to build a digital ready workforce strategy across Devon and indeed across the country as a whole. So it's not just going to be about Torbay, it's going to join up with Derriford, Truro, Exeter, North Devon and hospitals further afield. So if somebody falls under a bus in London, they may even be able to, wherever they go to hospital, they will be able to get their records digitally. And the main debate was to make sure that they all have the same system. I don't know about all the various internet systems, digital systems that there are, but they are all going to be joined up together, hopefully probably being the best word, because whether they work or not, I don't know. But we will all be this part of the same digital system throughout the NHS. That is the aim, because this figure quoted of 3.7 billion, well, that's not just for Torbay, and actually there are going to be a new new hospital being actually built in Torbay at present. So Torbay is moving on. I think they probably are the pioneers of this project, but it is countrywide and not just our own local area. And that's all I want to say, really, Chairman. But we have to move forward, because I know those of us who've been in hospitals, we see people running up and down armed with bits of paper all the time, and that is well outdated, and this does have to happen. So I would hopefully hope that this will go forward and they'll be able to carry it out in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. I don't think it's safe, Councillor McKay, to fall under a bus yet. Councillor Hawkins.
As a bus enthusiast, because it can actually damage them. So I'd rather you didn't throw yourself under the bus, please. The system will be compatible across the country, as Councillor Rose said. I find it surprising we don't have governors at Derriford. And I don't know whether the Chief Executive could follow that up, because we assume, sort of being on our side of the area, that there would be governors at Derriford, as we have at Torbay. So please don't throw yourself underneath the bus, because it does damage them. Thank you.
Wishing to remind the executive member, of course he is the executive member for the whole of the South Hams, and it is his job to find out what's going on with Derriford and the Western End.
Right. Councillor McKay, you've got your hand. I'll come back to you. Yeah, I gather. Yeah.
Yeah. How do we know that this is going to be compatible across the country? I don't understand how they can make that statement.
Because all the trusts are working together. I understand some years ago when they tried to do it nationally, they spent a huge amount of money which was wasted, so I understand. But that's a long time ago, and before I certainly got involved. But they will all be compatible. That's what I'm told.
You are Representative Councillor Rowe. Yes, I will allow you back.
Thank you, because I probably think that maybe Torbay is the only healthcare trust which engages with councils, because I don't think even Devon County have representatives on North Devon District Hospital or any other district hospital. They only have a representative on Torbay, the same as we only have a representative on Torbay and not Derriford. I don't know why that is, but it would seem that perhaps Torbay engages with councils more than any other hospital trust. That's the explanation I could give for that. But I do report back to council, and I have heard some of you say, well, we don't want to know about Torbay, we want to know about Derriford, but I report back in due time what information I get as it comes out. We've had quite a lot various times, and sometimes we don't get much for a long time, and some of it, of course, is confidential anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Panel and then Councillor Birch.
Yes, I don't know if anyone can answer this, but if it's so important that as stakeholders we are consulted by the Torbay and South Devon Trust, why it's the Plymouth Hospitals Trust doesn't equally find it important to consult with us, and maybe they should be, or maybe that's something we should be talking to them about as to why we're not being consulted when Torbay is, please.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Thank you. I find it slightly disturbing that our representative on the trust was not aware of this motion, bearing in mind that the proposer and seconder share the same ward as her. I mean, that is slightly disturbing, but putting that to one side, I mean, clearly there is a diluted form of enthusiasm for this proposal. And I think if we've been told that we are a stakeholder, that being the case, I'd like to put forward a proposed non-contentious amendment to the motion, in that at the end it reads, subject to the council receiving regular reports on the progress of this ambitious programme. I think that's the least we can do if we're going to support it, is to actually receive regular support. Now, I know what the response is going to be is, well, we do have a representative on the trust, and surely she will keep us in touch. But in view of the fact that she wasn't aware of what's going on until she received the papers, then I don't have too much confidence in that form of reporting.
Because that, Councillor Birch, it's not true. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know this motion was going to be put here until I saw it, but I did know the contents of it because I'd been at previous meetings. But I didn't know that my two fellow ward councillors, although they live on the other side of the river to me, and we don't meet that often, but that's where that came from.
A question has been asked by, or a suggestion has been put forward by Councillor Birch. Is it acceptable to add those words to the motion? Yeah. Right. So.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Thomas.
It's
oh, sorry.
I've lost it. Subject to the council receiving regular reports on the progress of this ambitious programme. So when I can, yes, I'm too slow.
I sometimes think that Mr. White can sometimes read people's minds because he's up there quicker than you. Yes. They already have. Yeah. Councillor Hawkins.
Could Councillor Birch invite them to an overview and scrutiny meeting where all the information can go to councillors and you can scrutinise the project?
I was thinking of adding that to the wording, but then, but then I thought that might bring out some prejudices within the some members of this council.
I would be happy for it to
Well, go for it.
be put in. Let's ask them to come.
If you're adding a bit more to the amendment,
Is that okay?
no speak.
Chairman, I regret to give away my potential voting intention, but could I request that Mr White registers those who choose to abstain at the same time, please?
Yeah, point taken. Okay. Now we've got, that is now the substantive motion, yes? Everybody happy with the wording on that? So can we all go to the vote by show of hands, those in?
That is 20 in favour. Thank you, Chair.
Those against?
None against.
Councillor Thomas has asked, abstentions?
Can I have my vote recorded as well?
That's 8 abstentions, and for clarity, Councillors Thomas and Baldwin have those recorded in the minutes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
I move the motion, Chairman, but I need to add that Councillor Rose is unable to be here today because he has COVID. So Councillor McKay has agreed to second it at the meeting this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so this is similar to something I brought, remember I brought before you December 2020, which is looking at character area assessments for conservation areas. And this is a really important thing that we should be doing in the view of many of our residents. I mean, for some people, it might be something that they might want to think about doing as an addition to their neighbourhood plans, or if some may have already had some of the work done. But really, we've got an awful lot of fantastic heritage in our small hamlets. And this isn't, but while we have a lot of protection for individual buildings through their individual listings, it's the actual association between them that gives a conservation area and an opportunity to protect a slightly wider group of those housing or buildings, whatever they are, in their setting. And we haven't really carried out much in the way of this kind of work for quite some time. I recognise the implications are that it will mean that we have to use our heritage officers more and maybe even recruit more into it. And in fact, when I did that previous motion, I understood that extra people were being recruited at the time. I don't think that's happened, but nevertheless, it's a really important way of supporting the protection of our important buildings and the groups of those buildings. And I've suggested it comes through the parish councils because obviously they know their areas really well. And I think if we invite them to propose potential hamlets or similar village centres, etc., or groups of buildings, then we could start to take that forward. So I ask people to support this, but I think it's an important motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy, do you want to speak now or reserve your right? Right, so I'll open it to members to the debate. Take Councillor Swearden, then I'll take Councillor Pearce.
I'd like to propose an amendment that the words that the proposal is managed by parish councils and is subject to a parish referendum.
Thank you. People
who are within these communities should have the right to decide whether they want to be in a conservation area or not. You shouldn't be imposing it on people. They should have a parish and these communities should have the right to decide whether or not they want this to happen.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Could I speak before we take that amendment?
Yeah,
because
Councillor
Smearden might agree to withdraw it when he hears what I've got to say.
When he's told.
No. Well, when he's informed, maybe when he's informed, because the guidance from English Heritage on this particular point is that local planning office authorities, so that's us, South Hams, are under a positive legal duty to assess their area and review it from time to time to consider whether areas are suitable for designation or to remain designated. Conservation areas can be created where a local planning authority identifies an area of special architectural or historical interest which deserves careful management to protect that character. An area has to be identified by the local planning authority as having a definite architectural quality or historic interest to merit designation. And in deciding whether to designate, an authority may take into account the resources likely to be required in the process of designation and appropriate follow-up of consultation and formulation of policies for the new area. Now, that's the legal side of it. Once again, I suspect some members have not been reading their papers because it's actually an agreed action in Better Lives for All. And the first time we talk about Better Lives for All, that TV's gone off, but you can still see it up there. There is an action that proposed employing a new heritage officer to carry on the work of the conservation area management plans that we've got, appraisals and management plans that we've already got. Now, I've got some figures here. In South Hams, we already have 47 conservation areas, and we have 17 conservation appraisals, of which 10 have management plans. But these are all quite old because they were done in the 70s and 80s. Now, mind you, that shouldn't be a disadvantage because if they've been conserved properly, nothing much will have changed. But I think they do need reviewing. The new officer is the application for the job is going to be advertised this month. And so we will soon have somebody in place. Meanwhile, Sarah Gibson has been doing the appraisal and has been working out a matrix of the, I suppose, the most important areas to begin on. Now, the new officer will be shared with West Devon, so there's not going to be a huge amount of work coming forward, but that's not to say that when an area is designated for a new appraisal, and there should be a programme, so you should know in advance whether you're on the list or not, there will absolutely be an opportunity for local groups or the parish councils to help with that work and assist the officer in pulling together the information required. Now, many of you who have neighbourhood plans will already have a good idea of whether you have a designated conservation area or not, and many of you will already have collected together a long list of non-designated heritage assets and why you think they're important, and those will be in your neighbourhood plans. So a lot of that kind of initial spade work has been done, even in places where there aren't appraisals, and I think the new officer and Sarah Gibson will look forward with working with you in the future to bring these plans forward. So in brief, I very much support the thrust of this motion, but I do think that as the council is already well along the way of seeing how it would work, and as we are the local planning authority and therefore have the remit to put this in action, that I would suggest that the method suggested is not suitable, and for that reason and that reason alone, I shall be voting against this motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Are you?
I'm not really convinced that because sorry to disagree, but what's been proposed sounds to me as though it's going to be a case of having communities having this done to them, and I think but will they have the choice to opt out if they don't want it? This is the problem. I don't think.
So you're not withdrawing what you want to add, right?
And I've got a seconder.
Have you got a seconder?
Yes.
Right. Councillor Hodgson, are you?
Oh,
brain's gone dead. We've got a seconder. Right, monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the amendment is out of order in the sense that it's not the legal process. The legal process is as set out by Councillor Pearce. The decision is ultimately one for us as local planning authority to make. It is not subject to referenda or people being given the option to opt out. So therefore inappropriate for the council to pass this amended recommendation or resolution. That's correct.
Right, I accept what the monitoring officer says, but I still feel that there is an element of imposition, and I would ask that when this is enacted, then local communities are at the forefront of this, and their views are taken into account.
Thanks. As a seconder, yeah. I understand everything that Councillor Pearce has said, and there is clearly a legal process there. I don't think this is mutually exclusive with that. All it's asking for is that the parish councils be consulted and feed into that process. Parish councils. I'm not sure about referendums. I mean, the parish councils are meant to represent their communities. They do consult with their communities, and so they seem to be an obvious source of local expertise to help with this process. And that's all that's being suggested in this motion, really.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to add to this debate? Councillor Thomas.
Just on a point, very boring of grammar, Chairman, please can you delete the erroneous plurality of the council's apostrophe because it's upsetting me.
Oh. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Any other comments? So we go to. Oh, sorry, Councillor O'Callaghan.
Just a quick question. Is it just parish? Is it meant to be town and parish councils or just parish councils? I'm not sure. It's just a small point. Is it specifically what Is it specifically meant for parish councils? I'm not sure.
If I can clarify, sorry. Yeah, it could be town and parish. I mean, towns are parishes, but it doesn't. It's town and parishes. It's not. Yes. I accept the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Baldry, I did warn you about whispering on your breath. Got a seconder for that adding in the town? That's an amendment? Are you happy with putting town? Right, okay. No more debate? No? So we go to the vote then, don't we?
Before we do, Chair, Councillor Hodgson does have the right to sum up.
Well, if she wishes to, yes, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just like to thank Councillor Pearce for reading out the legislation on this. I mean, that's something I've been made aware of, that there is a legislative process and requirement on us. And I just felt that, this joint local plan review process coming up, it was really just timely to try and engage the parish councils, town and parish councils more into what we do. I mean, they can be a real aid because a lot of them, having done that, as I say, the work on their neighbourhood plans, are very aware of places that could actually do with that bit more support and do have good places that maybe we're less aware of because as councils do change, especially over the years since we did a lot of this work previously. I just hope everybody can support it. I can't see that it's contentious. I think it just is an add-on. Thank you.
Thank you. That's that. So, Mr. White, we'll go to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members all in favour of the motion? That's 12 in favour, thank you, Chair. Those against, please, members. That's 14 against. Apologies, 13 against with 3 abstentions. Thank you. So for clarity, that's 12 in favour with 13 against and 3 abstentions, totaling 28. Thank you, Chair.
simply move your motion, councillor?
Yeah, I move the motion, thank you.
All right. Would you like to second it, councillor McKay, just briefly? Right. Would you like to now talk to your motion, councillor Hodgson, please?
Well, again, I think this is fairly self-explanatory. Obviously, you know, we're sort of 4 months since I last put this forward, so there have been different changes since. But nevertheless, this is, again, just really thinking about how we can just get community composting moving, and I think we need to encourage communities, groups to be doing it. We've actually set money aside, so I think it's about being proactive, and again, trying to get our parish councils to engage and support them if they wish to put some proposals forward. And I think there's things around, it's not just about them coming up with ideas. I think we could maybe help them a little bit with coming up with suggestions of what this might look like, how it's happening, and where they might go and see other ones that are working well. And also offer the services of our green waste chopper, which I think is a really important part of the community composting initiatives that already are working, because that's really critical to it. So again, I think I would hope it's a non-contentious, and I hope everybody here would support it if you're supporting your parish councils. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKay, do you want to speak now or do you want to reserve the right?
I have very little to add to what.
You can speak later if you want to.
No,
Right, okay. Councillor Pearce.
Yes, Chairman, I'd like to propose a small amendment, which I hope that Councillors Hodgson and McKay will accept. In the second line, it says that this will remain a problem for some areas of the district. I'd like to change the will to might, so that it reads that this might remain a problem for some areas of the district. And otherwise, I think this is really a motion where the job is done, because we've passed the money in the budget. I know that Sarah Moody's been working very hard on how this would actually work on the ground, and we're expecting a report to come to the executive at the end of the month, or at the beginning of March. And it will cover things that Councillor Hodgson has just mentioned. So I think, the situation is under control. I don't know whether Councillor Baldry wants to add anything, but as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of job done, but I'm happy to support the motion.
The first thing I want to do, have you got a seconder for your? Seconder. Right. Now, Councillor Baldry, would you like?
I was about to second it as well, but just to say, we will be introducing composting schemes and the finance will be made available across the district. I don't like the opening sentence, which is says, in light of the current difficulties I think we would have done this whatever the difficulties were with garden waste collection and FCC. I'm going to vote in favour as I hope it will be amended, but I think we need to separate the two issues. Composting schemes across the district, I would have hoped we could have introduced, whether or not we were having trouble with FCC.
Thank you, Councillor Bart. Councillor Hodgson, will you accept that one word change?
I do.
Right. So, any further debate on the matter? Councillor Panel?
Yeah, I'd like to support this and draw attention to the fact that in South Brent we have one of the forerunners of a really successful community composting scheme. I declare an interest because I live about 750 yards away from where it is. And Councillor Smurden is very good at bringing down the waste from Rattray behind his tractor, which is even better. So it gets a lot of community support. But I'd just like to draw attention that the increased use of the South Brent scheme during the suspension of the brown bin collection has meant that the surface, the concrete surface there, has deteriorated alarmingly. I know they have written to officers. They wrote before Christmas and didn't get a reply. I think they probably will get a reply. But can I please make a plea that now we have funding in place for schemes of this sort, that this is looked at favourably, because unless we support these schemes financially, they're not going to work. So it's important that we take on not only the moral support but also the financial support where necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Panel. I'm going to suggest to you and to Councillor Smurden, as I've suggested to 3 of my parish councils, if they find a site, I'll get a load of ready mix in under my sustainability fund so that they can go ahead, because I think this is the way forward. It has to be the way forward. Okay, so everybody all they want? Yes, Great. Can we have a vote on this, please? All in favour of the motion?
That is unanimous as amended. Thank you, members.
Right, thank you very much, members. We're now coming to the end of the meeting. It just remains, just before I shut the meeting down, Councillor Brazil, thank you. Just before I shut the meeting down, thank you for everybody for your attendance today, and also it's been pleasing that 99% of it's been done in a very nice way of putting it, and a little bit of frivolity. Yeah, I can't say that word, can I? It's no harm at all, and I think we've debated everything very well today, and it is nice to be back in here, albeit not up to full speed yet. Thank you very much.